Coming up on Lyssa and Lyssa.
Over the list of the 9 criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. And I'm going to tell you with each criteria how that looks for a narcissistic person, how they display this, and then I'm going to relate it for you to a dismissive avoidant characteristic or behavior or coping mechanism that often gets conflated with this to show you the way that it confuses people. And then I'm going to tell you how you can tell the difference. Okay?
Hey! Listen!
Hey guys! Welcome back to Lyssa and Lyssa. I am your host, Lyssa. Wow! Yeah. Today I have a very special episode for you. I know I've hinted at this topic a little bit. I've said the word here and there. I've dabbled. I've dipped a little. I've mostly avoided saying the word and using the term because it's been just heavily inundated into our brains over the past few years. It's everywhere. It's on every social media site. Everybody and their mama is saying that they encountered this, or they're calling someone this, or they're talking about this. So, does anybody know what I'm talking about? Okay, let's say it together. Ready?
3, 2, 1.
Taylor Swift.
What?
If you want to leave, you can go. It's okay. Narcissism. Narcissists. We know. You know what I'm talking about. You know. When you know, you know. I didn't like the stigma that has been attached to people who are using that word lately. And a lot of people not using their own discernment and listening and being able to discern when someone's actually talking about it and has credibility with what they're saying, or someone who throws that term around. It's annoying. I see it on the internet. You see people say,
Everybody's a narcissist. Everyone's calling everybody a narcissist.
then they'll say that in return to someone who's actually being affected by narcissistic behaviors, and they're very well describing them. And if there's no need to say that in that situation, you gotta employ your knowledge and your brain power. Decide where it fits and decide where it doesn't. So that just like irked me all the time. Irked. Irking me. So I decided I wasn't going to say that term. And if I did say it like a couple of times, I would just reference it while always making sure to responsibly let people know that I am not calling anyone this, and explaining what NPD is, which I'll get into, and just making it clear that I don't have the right to diagnose. There was a lot. And I wanted to really get a good handle on what I understand about it. And I think there's still a lot more to learn. Once you start studying it, it's really obvious why many people call things narcissistic that aren't narcissistic. It's just a lot of confusion surrounding the topic. And the only way to solve all that confusion, sort it all out, is to research and learn and figure it out, learn more. Just learn more. So that's what I have been doing for a long time now, really wrapping my brain around what it means to be narcissistic, what it means to have NPD. And for a while, you know what I was doing? I was doing something very, very, very interesting. Fits right into what I'm talking about right now. Which is why I can understand how other people are making these mistakes, okay? When I didn't quite understand the dismissive avoidant category of attachment style, I was doing this weird grouping thing of things I don't understand but seem similar, and I was putting them all into a category together. And I was attributing a lot of things that are more attributed to a narcissist, or more attributed to a person with a character disturbance, toxic behavior in a relationship, exhibiting behaviors of emotional abuse, things like that. Maybe they don't have NPD diagnosed, but they exhibit a lot of the behaviors that a narcissist would exhibit. So, are they narcissists? No, I can't diagnose them, but I was taking all those behaviors that I knew about, and then this attachment style that I don't really understand, that seems kind of similar in a lot of ways, dismissive avoidant attachment, and my last relationship, fearful avoidant. They were much more presenting on their avoidant side than they were on their anxious side. So I was putting all those 3 things together because I didn't understand my ex. I still don't understand him. I never will. Didn't understand narcissism all the way, and didn't understand dismissive avoidant attachment. So I grouped all those things together, and I was really conflating dismissive avoidance with narcissism big time. And you'll see example of this if you go back and you watch my first dismissive avoidant video. I had the coping mechanisms right, but when I was giving my commentary in between, I noticed that a lot of it, I was creeping over into that territory. It was like I was describing a narcissist, or it was like I was describing someone who was being emotionally abusive. To be as clear as possible, I was actually describing my ex and getting that confused with being a dismissive avoidant, which was not the case. I thought in the moment I was doing a great job, but I didn't recognize until upon looking back and new things that I have learned that I wasn't making the mark. I think I owe some further diving in, clear up some of that stuff that I might have gotten a little bit wrong. We're gonna separate these two out because they're not the same. And you'd actually be surprised at how many people don't realize that they're doing this. They're not making this differentiation. Actually, there's a big problem with a lot of people online and out in the world just being really angry at dismissive avoidance. They're very angry at avoidant attachment styles, even the fearful avoidance sometimes. Avoidants don't have a good reputation out there. Let me just say, avoidant attachment style is hurtful to an anxious attachment style, and vice versa. They hurt each other because they trigger the crap out of each other. And they're just like, trigger, 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 and it's a roller coaster. It can get bad. So, warrantedly so, people are upset by how being with an avoidant has made them feel. And a lot of avoidants are upset with how being with an anxious person has made them feel. There's a lot more hate out there, though. For the avoidance. People just demonizing them, just like swearing away from them forever. Just like,
I will never date an avoidant. You should break up with them immediately if you find out.
And I don't think that's fair. Although I did feel that way before. But upon researching, I think that the anxious gets a little more credit for being the innocent one than the avoidant does. And they're not so innocent. I think they both equally have their problems that are substantial and that play into the dynamic equally. So I wouldn't say anymore that the avoidant is more problematic than the anxious. I wouldn't. I bet I way better see the problems with the anxious now.
What?
Than I did before. So, sorry guys. You problematic too.
Yeah,
okay?
exactly.
So, I'm going to clear this up. Dismissive avoidants are not narcissistic personality disordered people. It's not the one and the same. And so this video will clear that up for you, okay? Without further ado, let's get into it.
Let's do it.
The channel is growing, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. It's going to be rolling out lots of different content, all about attachment style. And you're going to want to make sure that you are in there like swimwear, okay? Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Do it. Do it. So why are these two things often conflated? Let's start by defining what each thing is. We're going to start with dismissive avoidant attachment style. This is, like it reads in its name, an attachment style. Attachment styles are categories based on how your experiences in childhood, specifically related to your caregiver relationship and experiences with that, in regards to how your caregivers responded to your needs directly and what you learned from that, what you took away from that. And then that's then carries into your adult relationships and shows how you will then attach in those relationships, okay? So it's based on childhood trauma and the way you interpreted the way your needs were met and responded to, whether it was physical needs or emotional needs. For one, attachment style is not a disorder. It is not a mental illness. It is not a deficit. If someone says that you have an insecure attachment style, that's not a deficit. There's nothing wrong with you, okay? Because this is how it works. There's 50% of the population comes out of childhood as secure. The other 50% comes out insecure. Now, I know there's negative connotations. I often talk about words and their connotations because I think it really matters. So a lot of times people hear, you're an insecure attachment style, and they think that you're attacking them. But it's not. It's just that insecure, the word, has other connotations in society that aren't necessarily applied here. So insecure attachment just means that you were one of the people in childhood that didn't necessarily always get your needs met or responded to in quite the way that you needed at the time. It developed coping mechanisms in you that sometimes can be unhealthy. And how many of us is that? Well, about 50% of us, okay? So don't worry about it. And I am one of them. So about 50% of the population does not get their needs responded to in childhood the way that they would have needed that to happen so that they could develop coping mechanisms that were healthy in their adult relationships. So that's a big percentage. It's nothing to be ashamed of, okay? Now, insecure attachment is broken down into 3 different categories. We have dismissive avoidant attachment, which is about 20% of the population. And then we have anxious preoccupied attachment, which is about 20% of the population. And then we have our last attachment style, which is fearful avoidant attachment, which is only approximately 10% of the population, give or take. Okay? So today we're focusing on dismissive avoidant attachment. What is common to a dismissive avoidant's childhood is that they learned big time that emotions are weak. If you have emotions, stop all that. It's a waste of time. Not only do they learn that it is bad to show your emotions, they actually train themselves to believe that they don't have emotions, that they don't get emotional. You might often see them say,
I'm very logical. I don't really get emotional. I don't really have any emotions. Like I'm just chill. I'm just laid back. I don't do all that.
When we get into studies of psychology and how the human mind works and how emotions work within human beings, we know that that's not possible. We do know that neuroscience proved within the past few years that every decision by every human being is initially backed by an emotion. It's all emotional. Everything about us is emotional. Even if you come and sweep in quickly and apply logic to it, you still made that decision based in an emotion, based in your emotions. Whether you are in touch with them or not, they will rule your life, and they will rule it in very destructive ways if you refuse to acknowledge that they are an essential part of the construct of who you are. By denying your emotions and acting like you don't have them and not getting familiar with them, you rob yourself of that logical way of going about your life, which would be to understand your emotions. So this is not the way that is most conducive to healthily attaching and having the most fulfilling life that you could ensure for yourself. But hey, about 50% of us are still working on that. And the best part about attachment is that you can heal your attachment. You can always work on it and become secure. So just because you did not get a secure attachment out of your childhood does not mean that you cannot become securely attached in adulthood. You can, but you have to recognize it, that you are insecurely attached. You have to take the necessary steps to heal that attachment. Each attachment style that is insecure has attachment wounds. Ouch! And these are related to their childhood traumas and their areas of which they did not get fulfilled in childhood. And they are usually backed by some core limiting beliefs that are still operating in their subconscious mind. Really common to the dismissive avoidant is going to be the fear, I am a failure. There's going to be the I will be trapped. There's also going to be the I will be controlled or I will be enmeshed. So they are very hyper independent. The way that they coped with their needs not being met in childhood was that they learned that they could just meet all of their own needs and they don't need anybody. So they became very self-sufficient. They were probably forced to be that way in childhood. And so they just continued into adulthood operating that way. So they automatically assume that anyone around them cannot meet their needs. They automatically portray this persona of, I can meet all my own needs. I don't need anyone. But as we know, human beings, we do need each other. We do need someone, and we are very pulled to connect with each other. So they will say this, and they will believe this very strongly. However, their automatic human needs are going to be desiring for someone else to try to meet their needs and want to meet their needs. And they will also feel a bit unfulfilled when no one can. But what they sometimes miss is that no one can because they don't believe anyone can, and they won't let anyone. So they're going to be forever unfulfilled. They often will believe that is because of the people that they are with. And we kind of all do that. Instead of immediately realizing that it's actually within them to allow someone to be able to meet their needs. They're not allowing any space for that. So they don't realize this at first, but a key part to healing that attachment style is to recognize this and to start letting down that guard and allowing other people to try to meet your needs, and also just expecting that people can't always meet them, and that's okay. And that it's more about the fact that they are trying. And it's more about the fact that you don't have to meet all your own needs. You can let somebody in. You can let somebody close to you. You can let emotions close to you. They don't feel comfortable with this at first, though. So dismissive avoidants can be very, very focused on the things that they're pursuing in life, their successes. They learned that one way that they can guarantee they get validated and they find success is by their achievements, okay? Because achievements don't get responded to the same way that emotions got responded to in their childhood. They were successful. They felt good about themselves when they were achieving things, when they were accomplishing things. That's how they stood out. So they tried to always be the top notch of everything. be the best in sports or to be the best in school achievements. Everything about achievement is what was so important to them. And they just thought,
keep these annoying emotions out of here. That just gets in my way. I can't be worrying and crying and being upset about things. I need to get on to the next thing. I have things to do. I have places to go.
that's their MO. They're like,
I don't have time for all that. Stop being a baby. You need to grow up and you need to take care of what you need to take care of.
they're missing a very essential component of that emotions when dealt with properly can be a cornerstone in your success. They can be a cornerstone in a fulfilling life. They're very important. It's a balance. So anyone that's leaning too far in one of the other directions is very inevitably going to struggle and going to find that they're not getting the outcomes that they want. So often a big overall struggle for dismissive avoidance is that they will find success in life, monetarily, financially, in their careers. They will excel there and they will get through that, and they will recognize there's still such an everlasting feeling deep down of loneliness and of lack of connection with others. And dismissive avoidants that are heavily into their dismissive attachment are going to sometimes internalize that and bottle it down and just double down harder on, I don't want to look at that emotion. I don't want to entertain that. I'm fine. I don't need anyone. And those are the ones that tend to end up staying in that cycle. But then there's the other ones that are going to recognize there's an imbalance here and then work on themselves, bring that into a more balanced state where they can learn to embrace their emotions a little bit better and learn to accept that their partner has emotions. Because guess what? Dismissive avoidants are often with people who are on the other side of the attachment spectrum because opposites attract. So our dismissive avoidants often end up with our anxious preoccupieds, and they're just the perfect match, perfectly imperfectly matched. And they sometimes bring each other much turmoil. And they go through this avoidant, anxious cycle where we don't understand each other. It is within these dynamics that the problem I am discussing here today comes up, where it's typically their anxious partner or their fearful avoidant partner, or sometimes maybe even their secure partner that may mistake some of the coping mechanisms or behaviors of a dismissive avoidant for something similar to narcissism. And that is where we get a lot of times a misconception in society where people think that a key trait of dismissive avoidance is narcissism, or even if they don't say that directly, they will take behaviors that the dismissive avoidant is exhibiting, and when they describe them from their perspective, it sounds more like descriptions of a narcissistic type of behavior. And that is their perception of what it looks like. But if you take into consideration what is behind the behavior of the dismissive avoidant attachment, it isn't the same as what is behind that behavior that is being described and attributed to them, which is more key to narcissism. Okay, so then they just get all mixed up. In my journey, I was at that spot at one point. That's what it really looked like. So I can see how people, if they cling on to that and they go with that initial gut feeling, it can seem like that. But with a lot of research and focus on attachment theory and really understanding what was going on with that dynamic, since I knew that probably wasn't the case, I have come to a place where I much better understand what is actually going on. So now that I get it, I'm here to share it with you, my friend. Okay? Narcissism. Let's address that. What is narcissism? It's a set of personality traits or behaviors that includes an inflated sense of self-importance, entitlement, arrogance, a need for constant attention and admiration. Narcissism is not an attachment style. Narcissism is a personality disorder or a set of traits and behaviors. So here's like a really key confusion that happens with narcissism. Okay, this is always the conversation I hear. All right, so what is the difference between saying you're a narcissist or you're narcissistic? Oh, that's so narcissistic of you. Let's break this down. So the word narcissist is stemming from Greek mythology, and there was a character and his name was Narcissus, and he is the character who looked into his reflection, a mirror or a pond or something like that, and he fell in love with himself. A key part of narcissism is being obsessed with yourself, being so self-absorbed, being just in love, thinking you're the greatest thing since sliced bread. You're just amazing. You love yourself. So to a lot of people who are prone to insecurities and doubting themselves, which I am of that realm of people. This is wild to us. These type of people baffle us and it just doesn't make any sense, right? Because we're so used to just doubting ourselves and always thinking low of ourselves and just always leading with insecurity and thinking that there's something wrong with us. I'm telling you, I truly could not fathom that there are people out here on this earth that are just so exceptionally impressed with themselves. I don't understand. It was hard for me to grasp that that's a real thing.
Wait a minute.
The thing is that there are, but oddly enough, narcissists aren't those people. Because narcissism, actually, lo and behold, stems from deep, deep, deep insecurity. So it's an overactive coping mechanism, an overinflated correction of this deeply broken, insecure place inside of them that dealt with their trauma in the way of forming personality traits that would always protect them from having to think so lowly of themselves. So the way that they coped with their insecurity was to decide that they are greater than everyone. And they are constantly masking that deep insecurity. They are constantly fighting that notion that they are not good enough. They are constantly fighting hard to make sure that no one ever could think that they are that lowly, insecure, helpless person that they may have felt like as a child. And the really difficult part to understand about narcissism is that a lot of it is not conscious. So surface levels of it could be. So for instance, a lot of people will ask, do narcissists know that they're hurting someone? Do they know they're a narcissist? Are they scheming and plotting and planning and have this big evil plan? They tend to know eventually that what they're doing is hurtful to other people, yes. However, the subconscious reasoning behind it is not blatantly and plainly known to them. And they have convinced themselves so deeply that they deserve to act this way, that they are entitled to act this way, that everything that happened up to then, they can't see all that background noise anymore. They just know the outcome of it. The outcome of it is don't let people think that they're better than you. You're better than everyone. They don't know all that other background stuff that's the reason behind that. So they have justified all of this. It's justified because they're better. They are better than these people. They're better than everyone. So yeah, they can hurt people, but they have to because they deserve it. They deserve that thing that they wanted. They deserve status. They're so unique. They're so much better. And also, they're justified in hurting those people because those people would hurt them if they didn't. And that person is trying to slight them, so they can slight them. They can talk crap about them. They can look down upon them. So they're justified the whole time. They're not recognizing that they're creating all of this. They think they're very, very, very much entitled to all of these things. Is it conscious? Not completely. No. They are just like everybody else. Their behaviors are a reflection of their experiences, their trauma, and the way that they learn to cope. And the way that narcissists learn to cope is problematic, big time, big time. And we all know narcissistic abuse causes a lot of pain and hurt and sorrow and troubles, and it's a big problem for everybody but the narcissist. And honestly, eventually it will be. It will be, but not at first. It's out here running amok and hurting a lot of people, and they don't tend to care that much about it. You might have heard of the term narcissistic personality disorder. And you might be wondering how that's different than just saying narcissism or a narcissist. And so let me break that down. So narcissist or narcissism is used colloquially. It's a hard word to say. Colloquially. It is used that way in common social settings. In regular conversation, it is a term that is used to describe a person's personality traits or behaviors that are like the things we've just talked about. So all of that, we can definitely say, are narcissistic behaviors and traits, even if people do not have narcissistic personality disorder. There is a such thing as just that's a narcissistic activity or trait or behavior or way of thinking. Yes, so that can be ascribed colloquially, just like you can say someone is condescending, or you can say someone's being arrogant, or you can say that they are behaving in a narcissistic manner. What you shouldn't do is say that someone is a narcissist or throw that around or be what they call an armchair therapist, where you're just diagnosing people and saying,
You're a narcissist. You're a narcissist and that's what's wrong here.
no. To say someone is a narcissist refers to someone who has narcissistic personality disorder, meaning that they have been diagnosed by a medical professional in a clinical setting with narcissistic personality disorder. So there are 9 criteria in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And this is in the DSM-5. And so when a medical professional is evaluating someone for narcissism, they are going to evaluate those 9 criteria across multiple areas of their life, multiple different settings, and they're going to see to what level this person exhibits these traits and behaviors, how many of them they exhibit, how frequently, and how negatively does that particular behavior impact their life in all of those areas. So not only does it have to be present in multiple places, so they can't just be narcissistic or have these behaviors just in their romantic relationship to have NPD. They need to have it displayed in their friendships and maybe in their family relationships. Maybe at work they display it as well. It requires a professional to diagnose, because it's not just a very specific set of parameters where you can just run down a list and go check, check, check. And then if there's this many checks, it means they're a narcissist. No, it takes a professional that very widely understands the field of psychology and understands mental health and to a dynamic level, because one area of the DSM may outweigh another, and you need to have a full understanding of what's important. All of that knowledge, and all of that knowledge only comes with many years of studying and a dynamic and full grasp of the field and of what narcissism is. Okay, so but to a basic level, how many of these 9 did they exhibit? And the standard is 5 of those criteria. But again, we can't just go off of that. You can't just figure out what the 9 criteria are and then decide, well, they have 5, so this is a narcissist. I don't care if they have the diagnosis, because there's more to it. So the other thing is the level at which it is affecting their life negatively by having those different behaviors in those different settings. Okay, so that's overall the gist of it. The criteria that they go off of, there is an acronym that helps you to remember it, and it is Special Me. So let's go over that. The acronym is Special Me, so S.P.E.C.I.A.L.M.E. S is for a sense of self-importance, or also known as grandiosity. Number 2, for the P, is a preoccupation with power, beauty, and success. C, okay, well, not me totally skipping the E, sorry. E is for entitlement. C is for can only be around people who are important or special. And for my own understanding of that one, and a better C, I put circle and connections of prestige, because it refers to how they have a guy for everything. They think they have all the best connects and stuff like that. 5th one is interpersonal exploitation for personal gain. And 6 is arrogance. 7 is a lack of empathy. 8, the M is must be admired. And then 9. 9 is the E, and that stands for envious of others. They envy. All right. Now, keep in mind, you only need 5 of those in a clinical setting, pervasive enough in your life and across enough of your areas of life for that to be determined narcissistic personality disorder. You don't have to have all of them. The narcissist may exhibit none of some of those behaviors, but as long as they have 5 of them to a level enough that it is deemed negatively impactful enough on their life. That brings me to another really difficult thing about narcissism. So they say that narcissistic personality disorder is the only disorder in the DSM that the nature of it is largely only harmful to others that are around the narcissistic person and to the perspective of the person doing it, the narcissist. It's not actually that negative. They don't actually feel that it's affecting their lives too negatively until something happens where it matters enough to them. Why do you think that would be the case? If someone always prioritizes self and cares much more about themselves and places importance of people on their achievements and what they can get out of them, and doesn't see other people as human beings very much, and has just no empathy for others and thinks that they are deserving of everything above other people, then a narcissist isn't going to feel that their life is being negatively affected because they're stomping all over other people to get what they want. These people that are beneath them, the ones they're hurting, don't like them anymore. They don't care. They wouldn't step on people that they think are important. Do you decide that it's based on the perspective of the narcissist, or do you judge it based on all the people around that are being harmed? Because that's not typically how you diagnose someone with a mental or with a personality disorder. If it's not bothering them, then it doesn't qualify. It technically does not qualify for the diagnosis if it is not bothering them in their opinion. Now, the other part is it obviously destroys marriages. It destroys relationships. The thing about narcissists, though, is that they have that covered. Typically, they are cheating. They are having multiple sources of supply. They're going behind their partner's back, and they're flirting, and they're creating these other forms of supply. Narcissistic supply is the people around them that give them all that admiration and validation and make them feel like they're worth something. And so they'll initially be very enamored with the person that they're with, but that quickly goes into devaluation where they think that person's the worst person ever, and they take all of their narcissistic tendencies out on that person, and they make that person well below them. And then they just, when they're done, they just discard that person after they've destroyed them, and they bring in their other supply, and their supplies cross over. So they've already been kind of like gunning for a new one, and then before they throw out their old one. And now if they're trying to hold on to a supply that they have, like their current partner, they're trying to hold on to them, and they're, sweet talking them or maybe breadcrumbing them. They're just doing that. Again, there's always a self-motivation. They're doing it so that they can keep that person around until they get a secured new supply in that person's place. They might pretend to apologize and seeing the errors of their ways, and they're going to make up for it, and they're going to turn it all around, but they're not. In that time, they're going to be working on the smear campaign where they're making that person look terrible to everyone around so that when they do discard them, it looks like it's that person's fault. And they're going to be working on getting a new supply because they always have to have that. They always have to have someone admiring them and chasing them and falling all over them. They always have to have it. So in the case that it's a narcissist that is actually good at doing that, and they're very convincing, but so there's different cases. Sometimes there's narcissists that maybe they can't get someone to replace their wife. And that could inspire them to see it as their narcissism is affecting their life in a substantial negative way because it is causing their wife to want to leave them. That would promote some change. And that won't be, unfortunately, because they're upset about how they're hurting their wife. That will be because they feel the pain of no longer having that supply, what their wife provides to them. It's all about them. Even in recovery situations where they're getting therapy and they're working on themselves and trying to get past that, it's all about them just understanding why that's wrong. Doesn't necessarily mean that they change the fact that they believe that. They might never naturally feel that someone else's pain matters, but they can just assess that I like this person being in my life and I love them to the best ability that they can love, which is that they love what they do for them. They love having them around for what it provides to them, all of that. That's why they love someone. They can assess that they don't want to live without that person, and that could promote them to get this diagnosis and get help. So it's cases like that. But unfortunately, in the world we live in, there are very successful people that are full-blown narcissists that can reach great levels of success. And as long as they are okay with constantly replacing that supply as they bulldoze over people that they just don't need anymore and throw them to the side, they may never feel that that is a problem. And that is why it's hard to actually pinpoint how much of our population is actually affected by narcissism or how many people are actually narcissists, because oftentimes they are not diagnosed. Because they are just living their best life out here, all around us. They don't think it's negative. Maybe for you, but they don't care about you. So that's the trouble here. So what I'm going to do, the real helpful part is I'm going to then point out how you can decipher which is which. so that you no longer are conflating the two. You're no longer saying
Avoidants are terrible people.
Don't date an avoidant attached person. The avoidants are the problem. They're bad. They're this.
and you're really in your mind attributing qualities of narcissism to them, which you don't want to get into this pattern where you are maybe dating and you have some surefire list of questions that you ask on your first dates. And as soon as you see a sign that they might have a dismissive avoidant attachment style, you're immediately going,
Avoidant. Okay, thank you. I'm gonna wrap up this date and move on.
because that's not necessarily the case. And you have every right, granted, some people might decide that they don't want to date dismissive avoidance or insecurely attached people, period. It actually is statistically seen that most securely attached people pair up. They end up with a securely attached person and on their way into the future. And that then what's left over is all of the dismissive avoidants and the anxious preoccupieds, and they tend to pair up. And then the fearful avoidants, they kind of are intermixed in there because they have both anxious and avoidant tendencies. They kind of swing back and forth. So you have every right to say, I don't want to date someone who has dismissive avoidant attachment. But what I would say is that it's a bit unfair, because if you're attributing behaviors of narcissists and getting that confused with the behaviors that dismissive avoidant is exhibiting, which is for far different reasons. And the reasons behind someone's behavior is what really determines whether or not they are likely to be able to correct it. And the thing with dismissive avoidance is that they absolutely can. They absolutely can. And there's a great chance that they could, if they wanted to, and they do sometimes, change their attachment style and become securely attached. It happens all the time. Narcissism, not very often. Very rare. Quite a bit less common than for a dismissive avoidant to switch over to secure. So that's really unfair then, if you're conflating the two and you're ruling people out. Probably have every ability to change, and you don't even know on that first date how dismissive avoidant they even are. And you're just immediately going, nope, they're probably narcissistic, full of themselves, get out of here. That's just not going to be correct. You will be misjudging a lot of people, especially if you're already in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant. That's the other thing, is that if you're already in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant and you're commonly thinking these really sinister things about them and that they're hurting you on purpose, that's common. If you're an anxious preoccupied and you're with a dismissive avoidant, a lot of times it feels like they're hurting you. They're hurting you bad. Okay. And so if you can better understand why it's not the same as narcissism, then you'll have a better understanding of what is behind the reasons for your dismissive avoidant partner acting that way, and a better compassion for them and a better response to their behaviors. And it just won't hurt as much when you understand what's behind it. On the flip side, if you tend to be someone who often sacrifices their own needs and their own worth to remain in a relationship with someone who is not treating you well, there's cases where you could be thinking someone is just dismissive avoidant, but you're actually with a full-blown narcissist. And the reason that you can't seem to get any change in them, any improvement, and you just feel like, why? I know dismissive avoidance can correct their attachment style, so why is this happening with me? Why is this happening with this person? And you keep trying and you keep hanging in there. You could actually be with a narcissist. And that one is a lot less likely to improve. S. Starting with S in Special Me. The S stands for a sense of self-importance, which is also known as the grandiosity of the narcissist. In the narcissist behaviors, this is going to look like an inflated ego. It's like they're on their own pedestal. They're admiring themselves. They're just like,
Look at me, look at me. I am so special and so amazing, and everyone should obviously see it. It's so obvious.
They're going to have an excessive idea of everything that's great about them. It's going to be inflated. So any positive quality that they have is going to be focused on, and they're going to act as though they have it to a level that is far greater than they probably actually do. They're also going to have an air of superiority over most people. Especially if they have a romantic partner, they are going to believe that they are superior to that partner and that that person is beneath them. They are also going to feel this way probably in their career. They're going to believe that they are superior to everyone in their job. They're smarter than everyone. They are better at the job than everyone. They deserve a lot more than everyone. They are going to often believe that all eyes are on them wherever they go. I don't know if you've ever heard of like main character syndrome, where people just like are out in the world getting in other people's way because they're trying to be the main character and get some video done, like at the gym. You know, you see those videos where people are working out in the gym and they're totally making things inconvenient for the other people around because they have main character syndrome. It's all about them. They're at the gym, they're working out. This is their gym blog. They don't care about anybody else that's in there, but they're holding up or getting on camera that don't want to be on camera. And they're just like,
hello, it's all about me. I'm so important. I'm so important here at this gym. I'm like a celebrity.
it's not always so outwardly obvious like that, like where they're just like,
I'm so important. Look at me.
it's going to be in everything they talk about. So anytime you have a conversation with this person, they just want to talk about what they've been doing all day and what they're so good at. And every story that they tell, they're the hero. They're the hero of all of their past stories. They always did all these amazing things and they were always in the right. You know, no, they never did anything wrong to anyone. They just were always the shining star of perfection, and they're just someone to be so astonished with. And the really confusing part of grandiosity and this sense of self-importance is that it can also show up in a really covert way, which is where we get the covert narcissist. And this will be someone who they are the most at things, but they are the most overlooked. They got treated the most unfairly because they are so great and no one notices it, and they just got cheated. They didn't get as much of an opportunity as everyone else because they're actually the best. And the reason that they didn't get what they should have gotten is because the whole world is out against them. And it's always everyone else's fault because they did everything they're supposed to do. And people just keep not noticing how the world's just so unfair to them. They'll be like the one-uppers. Like they're the ones that want to like argue about how they have it worse than you, always. You might have a genuine concern or an issue that's going on for you, and you're not able to talk about your issue because they just want to tell you how they have it worse. They just want to tell you how you don't understand what they have going on. And they have it so much harder than you. So how could you complain? Their job is the hardest. Their commute is the farthest. Their childhood was the most traumatizing. All of that. That's still narcissism, and that's still this grandiosity idea. Okay, so it can show up that way. The dismissive avoidant coping strategy that often can be conflated with this is the hyper-independence factor. Dismissive avoidants can oftentimes be highly driven in their career or the things that they're trying to achieve. So that makes them present with having a very focused sense of what's important to them. And so sometimes that can look like a self-obsession, and that can look like they have a big ego because they're just focused on their achievement rather than showing emotions or being interested in other people's achievements. But the way that this is going to be very easily differentiated is going to be because a DA is not commonly going to need to put others down for them to feel important. So they will seem wrapped up in themselves at times. They will. But that behavior won't be presented in a way where they need to tear other people down so that they can feel most important and most prioritized. And their pride will be an actual achievement. You know, they will be taking pride in things that they actually are achieving and pursuing, and they're not going to be focusing on what next man is doing, trying to tear that person down to make sure that they remain of utmost importance and there's no room for anyone else. When it's narcissistic personality disorder, their self-obsession will be manifested in tearing people down for sure. There's no room for anyone else. They are of the top importance always. And furthermore, their sense of self-importance is going to be inflated. So it's going to be way more than it actually is. It's going to be over-exaggerated. And sometimes even lying. They might be lying about or changing stories and skewing stories to where they seem much more dramatic than they even were to make that person look 20 times better than what actually went down. And it's their skewed view of perception of their value. So very well, they could remember it that way. They could think that they did something just absolutely amazing in that situation, but other people that were there are going to be like,
It's literally not that big of a deal.
in their head, it's like there's this spotlight on them where they're just shining pillars of society. And they will remember things through that lens because perception is reality. It is. And the more times that they've retold this story and overinflated themselves more and more, it seems like it really happened that way. And that's kind of how our brains work. You tell a story enough times, even if you skewed it a bit, you kind of believe that that's the true story after a while. And when the spotlight's in their memory is always focused on them, it's always not focused on anyone else around. There could be a lot of other people that maybe did a lot more in whatever story they're telling. But that's going to be very minimized. They're not even going to point that out because in their perspective, they are the most important. And whatever anyone else did is going to get completely minimized and reduced down to barely anything. So the two main ways that you can differentiate this behavior of if you're dealing with narcissism or if you're dealing with just a dismissive avoidant is one, a condescending nature. So NPD will be marked by like an underlying snark all the time, where DA is not going to display probably much of that at all. They could, but little to none. So, for example, if you're talking to a narcissist, you'll notice that it's nearly impossible for them not to throw out little digs and little implications of how someone else is less than them and how they did something better than someone else. It's just this condescending tone. There's this suggestion that you're dumb or whatever you're saying is stupid and whatever they're saying is very smart. They will especially do this with people who are succeeding. So if somebody's sharing their win or their success, they're going to feel the need to do this to that person. They might throw out little digs at them about why that success isn't really that great, or some attempt to refocus the attention back on them. A lot of times it'll be in indirect, very belittling ways. So you're not going to see a lot of that with a DA. A DA doesn't feel the need to do that. The other way that you can really differentiate here is the perception versus the reality. Okay, so NPD is going to display little to no humility. There's not going to be humility within them much at all. Okay, whereas DAs can display a large amount of humility. They can do that very well. NPD will probably misrepresent their level of achievement, like I said, where they act as if everything that they've done is so grand, so big and amazing. But like that same act or an act that's even better is minimized if it's done by someone else. They quite literally see themselves as so much more important than anybody, than everybody, pretty much. This is not going to be the case with the dismissive avoidant. P. Preoccupation with power, beauty, and or success. Some NPD related behaviors for this one. It's going to be, they're going to excessively boasting about their achievements, about how gorgeous they are, about how so-and-so made this compliment, how all these people are flirting with them every day, how many boyfriends and girlfriends they've had. They will tell stories about people admiring them and thinking they're gorgeous and thinking they're so awesome. They're going to be show-offs. They're going to talk about all the cool things that they have. They're going to need to tell you how much things cost. They're going to need to tell you all their cool gadgets, what they had to spend on them, how exclusively VIP you have to be able to get one of these. They're going to want you to know those numbers. They're also going to show quite a disregard for others in their desperate pursuit of status, of winning something that seems desirable and important, being the best. They're going to just totally have a disregard for anyone they have to stomp on or hurt in the process of that, or gaining something that is regarded by the masses as important. There's going to be a lot of bragging, boasting about their accomplishments, which often includes the exaggeration and the lying. So that ties back into the sense of self-importance, the inflated ego. And like I said before, they're the hero of every story. It's their obsession and focus about talking about this all the time. They're just so lasered in on that. They almost can't stand it. They almost cannot stand it when someone else is talking about something that doesn't have anything to do with them. You will see them get bored and disengage from the conversation. They won't have any interest in doing things that benefit other people and not them. Ever. They're just totally preoccupied. A dismissive avoidant coping strategy that may be conflated with this and may look like this, sometimes get confused, is going to be their emotional detachment. So that's the suppression of their emotions and their emotional distancing that they do as part of their attachment style. The related behaviors for this are the prioritization of their own interests in their own career. The key part, though, is they do it to avoid the deep connection because of their fear of intimacy. So they're not doing it because they think they're so amazing and they're preoccupied with power and beauty and success. They're not doing all this grandiose bragging about it and constantly needing to talk about it. Even so, though, their partner oftentimes feels very disregarded in this. So whereas an NPD see how they have a disregard for others while they are constantly preoccupied with this power, beauty, success, okay? DAs are emotionally distancing from their partner because they have a fear of intimacy and they are going to more focus on their achievements. So then their partner inadvertently feels disregarded in that process. So very different, but looks quite similar sometimes to their already dysregulated partner, someone who's been in this cycle for a bit with them, an anxious person that's been in this cycle a bit with the DA for a while. Any reference from the DA to their work or their interests or talking about what they have going on when this partner already feels very disregarded, very overlooked, very passed over, that can easily be conflated with preoccupation, with success and achievement. What will be the main key differences to help differentiate here? For one, the dismissive avoidant is not going to do a lot of bragging. They're not going to be boasting and bragging about their power, their success, all their money, all their stats and stuff like that. They will just simply be focusing on their priorities in life. They're just going to simply have a laser focus on that. They don't have to do a lot of talking. And the reason for this is because they really don't need that validation. DAs don't need validation. They are their own, they're like their own ecosystem. They have everything that they need. Really, the number one, I think this will be like top of the list of how you can tell the difference between if you're dealing with a narcissist or if you're dealing with a dismissive avoidant is the need for that validation, the constant bragging, the need to be noticed and admired. A dismissive avoidant, they really like their alone time. They really like their solitude at times. They really like their independence and just not having to be involved with a lot of other people all the time. They need quiet focus. So they feel really smothered by someone coming in and giving them all that attention and all of that. They don't like that. A narcissist can't live without that. They need to be admired. They need other people to know how important they are. They need powerful people to sing their praises. They need to tell everyone what they have going on. They need to boast about their achievements. They need to do that. Dismissive avoidant, they're not concerned with what anyone thinks about what they're doing. They typically need zero validation to know that they're great. They can just think they're great based on the achievements that they achieve. They don't care if anyone else validates them. They don't need that. They give themselves that validation. And that's quite healthy in its own regard when it's balanced in other ways in relationships. So the narcissist doesn't have that at all. The narcissist is never done being validated. They need constant validation. The other thing is intention. Narcissistic personality disorder, they're willing to sacrifice people in ways that are very blatant and obviously hurtful, as if those people are just collateral damage that just got to be bulldozed so they can get to what they want, because it's very important that they get to that prize, that status. Whereas the DA might hurt their partner. That is a sad truth. They might hurt their partner in the process of avoiding emotional intimacy and pushing their partner away because they are afraid of that smothering feeling that comes with depending on another person and opening up emotionally. So that can look the same as disregard, but if you look closer. So an example of this would be a narcissist might make up a lie about somebody else at the office so that that person doesn't get promoted and they get promoted instead. That type of disregard. They're not even going to be concerned with the way they just destroyed someone's livelihood and life and everything like that. They're not even going to think about that. They're going to see that person as a necessary roadblock that they had to bulldoze out of the way because they're the most important and they have to get the raise. They have to get the promotion. They're focused on it. They're preoccupied with it. So for a dismissive avoidant, the way that they might disregard their partner is going to be more so like, despite your numerous requests for your DA partner to spend more time with you and you're needing more closeness, you're needing more time because they're always at work, even though you have made that clear to them many times, they come home and tell you that they've joined yet another work project. That could feel to the partner like they have a preoccupation with power and status and beauty. And they could be like,
Yeah, my partner's a narcissist.
but it's really just the fact that you're pressuring them to spend more time to do what? Be intimate and have emotional connection. And they're just like,
God, that sounds terrible. Ugh. I gotta stay away.
and they don't even consciously know they're doing that. They don't know that that's a distancing behavior. They're just taking on more at the office because they're afraid they don't want to do that closeness. That closeness makes them feel unsafe. So to their partner, that can seem like they're just preoccupied with all of their power and status and work stuff, and they don't care about how they're disregarding them. See how that gets confused? So this can get really tricky, and sometimes it can be nearly impossible to figure it out, to be honest, because intention is within the person, and you only can go by what someone reveals to you. And if they're not revealing their true intention behind an action, then how do you know? You might not. So you can get clues and you can make your best assessment, because if someone's doing something that by people who are of reasonable mind and sound mind would go,
that's very obviously harmful to someone for you to do that.
And this person's just acting like they're just, that's probably more narcissistic. If this person is doing something that's not directly harmful, they're not doing something that affects that person's life directly, like lying about them or stealing from them or something like that. They're just doing something that maybe disregarded them inadvertently. Then that might be more dismissive avoidant. They might be just doing avoiding behaviors because they don't feel comfortable with intimacy. They're going to continue to on and on and on and on and on discuss all the ways that they're powerful, they're beautiful, they're very successful.
You better, you don't know. You're going to see what I'm going to turn out to be. And you better act right, because if you want to be a part of that, it's going to be really great to be with me.
And they're going to talk about their future like it's this fantasy world that's coming soon. It's always this fantasy thing that they're reaching towards that they haven't reached yet. They're never content in the moment. They're always just like trying to get to this level of status that they, in their mind, think that they deserve. Moving right along to letter E. Entitlement. The E in Special Me, the first one at least, stands for entitlement. Narcissistic personality disorder is highly marked by entitlement. Entitlement means a deservedness of attention, of praise. It could be a deservedness of material items, of status, of prioritization, of importance, of recognition. It's assuming something. It's assuming that you are guaranteed something because you're just that special. And without even knowing you're doing it, it's just literally an assumption. It's an assumption in their mind that they just have programmed in there, that they think that they should be first at everything, top of everything, better than everyone at everything, and stand out more than everyone. A deservedness of service is also presumed. They express themselves in a way that kind of communicates or lets on to others that they are owed something. You can tell they believe that they're owed something. They assume they're owed something already, right off the gates, without ever having to earn it. And they especially will feel this way if they give any little thing to anyone else. So if they have to sacrifice any little thing, they are going to feel extra entitled. They are going to feel extra inconvenienced for anything for anybody else. So let's say that you both have work in the morning, but maybe on certain days the narcissist has work a little bit later than you. Other days maybe you have work a little bit later than them. So on the mornings when they have work first, they assume that you should just cater to their needs and their schedule, and you don't need to sleep in any longer. They get up, they might blast the music while they're getting ready. They need that. They need that for their morning routine. They're entitled to that. They have to have that. So they're going to sing in the shower and wake you up, and they're going to make a lot of noise when they bang around in the closet, and that just make a ton of ruckus to get ready in this huge whirlwind. And likely they would probably expect you to get up and serve them breakfast, and they're going to be entitled to all of that. But when you have to get up first and they don't have to go till later, you're likely going to be feeling pressured to be very quiet. Don't set an alarm because it's going to wake them up before they need to get up. But they had 12 alarms that they snoozed a million times and woke you up all the way. They don't even think about how that affects your sleep. They just know they need that many alarms. So they're just going to play their alarms over and over, even though you are still sleeping. It doesn't matter. They're not even going to think of that. And when you get up, though, you have to creep out of the bed quiet as a mouse and try not to wake them. You don't even take showers in the morning because you don't want to wake them. So you take them at night before you go to bed. And then you don't take one in the morning, and you have to go into your closet in the dark and try to find your clothes because the light really disturbs them. And as you're on your way out the door, you've been so quiet. You tried your best. The door creaks when you open it. And the narcissist wakes up. And the narcissist is going to feel so violated. And they're going to berate you for that. Or they're going to jab at you and be like,
can I ever just have a day when I get to sleep in a little bit? Can you just be a little bit more aware that I am having my day to sleep in today? I have to get up earlier on most of the other days. So why would you open the door so fast? You know it creaks when it gets to that spot. So why would you do that? God, it's like you don't have a brain. It's like you can never remember anything I tell you. Oh, it's so hard to remember that a door creaks. I guess you don't care about anything that I need or want.
Meanwhile, when it's you still in the bed, they have not a care about it. They make all the noise. They set off all the alarms. They don't care. They don't even notice that imbalance because they don't believe that's an imbalance. You are inferior to them and they are entitled. Okay, so that's what that's going to look like. Something like that. Different dynamics in different scenarios like that. Just like in that situation, narcissists are going to display an attitude or be very offended when they don't receive preferential treatment automatically without even having to ask for it. They just are like,
hello? I have a job? I have an entire job that I work? Are you kidding me? You expect things of me? I have a job.
it's just like the most simplistic of thing they think is so important, and then that means that they're entitled to everything. But you could literally be the leader of world peace, and you could be the person who found the cure for cancer, and they're going to be like,
okay, you think that's a big deal? I have a job that I go to every day. Full time. I need some time to myself. You're so selfish. You think that little peace club you have going on is something?
Try having a real job. Try working as hard as I do. Then maybe you'll understand. You don't understand.
That's how a narcissist will talk to you. It doesn't matter what you do. They're going to make it really small, and they're going to think they just deserve everything because they're entitled. Okay? Now, a DA coping strategy that can sometimes get conflated with this could be their hyper-independence again. They have a need for self-sufficiency. Self-sufficiency sometimes looks like a prioritization of their own needs and really putting their needs as the top importance. The reasoning behind it is going to just be different though. DAs do this because of a fear of intimacy. So they're going to have a resistance to compromising about prioritizing their partner's needs sometimes because their childhood taught them that they are the only ones that can meet their needs. And so they assume that everyone else should be able to meet their own needs as well. So sometimes prioritizing their self in that way can appear to be entitlement, even if it's not. So for example, they might have a project that they need to get done for work, and they might be really testy if you have a project that's coinciding with that, that's kind of distracting them. And they might seem like they don't really care about your project because they only had their mind on the project they had to get done for that night. And they might just be like,
Do you see? I need quiet in here. I need to get this done. I have all these work calls to make.
and they won't even really be interested that much in what you're doing and what your project is and what the parameters are around that. And there's going to be prioritization of that. So it's going to seem like they feel entitled to that space, to dictating what happens with it because of their own needs. That seems like entitlement sometimes. And I wouldn't disagree that it's not entitlement. It's not necessarily, though, what we're talking about when we refer to entitlement with a narcissist, to be determined to be a narcissist. The entitlement is going to be on a totally different level. It's going to be on an extremely... all of these things that we're talking about when we're diagnosing something, we're not diagnosing anything. Sorry. Don't get that confused. We're not diagnosing anything. But anything that we're referring to that is referring to something that is diagnosed is going to be something that is presenting to a level that is detrimental to someone's life. It's a constant, pervasive issue that creeps in very frequently and across all areas of someone's life and is negatively affecting them and the people around them. So this entitlement for a narcissist is going to be on a whole nother level. And it's going to be with everything, not just their needs. It's going to be they're entitled to everything that they want and everything that is great and good and better than what everyone else has. They are entitled to that. There's a big difference there. But to a dismissive avoidance partner that is more anxious, it can easily get confused and they can start seeing these little behaviors and be going like,
Oh, that entitlement. They seem pretty entitled. they have all the things on this list.
And they might start to think that DAs are the same as kind of the same behavior as a narcissist, and it is not the same. With the DA, the way you can tell the difference is that it's going to be more of a self-prioritization of their own needs rather than just entitled to everything. Bigger, better, greater, VIP treatment, everything is always supposed to be all about them. The areas that you would want to focus in on if you're trying to determine this would be independence and self-sufficiency. So a DA will work to achieve these things. Those two things are very important to a DA. That's why it sometimes can present like entitlement, because they're just of top importance. But what will be different about that is that while that may appear in both, NPD is going to be assumed right to that, whereas a DA is going to be a hardworking, motivated achiever who is constantly pouring into themselves and striving to be very independent and striving to maintain self-sufficiency. A narcissist does not have self-sufficiency. They can't survive without admiration and validation constantly. They need everyone to know how great they are, so they're not self-sufficient at all. A DA will work hard to be actually self-sufficient, and they're not going to need any of those things. Okay, so that's a big difference. And then also, like I kind of was just mentioning, autonomy. A DA will press for autonomy, which could appear maybe like excluding. It sometimes can feel to their partner like they're being excluded, while someone with NPD will just assume they are elite and above everyone, and they will exclude those that they see as less than them, which will likely eventually be their partner and many other people. For NPD, this will stem from a sense that they are better than everyone, or than anybody that doesn't have power and prestige and VIP status. But for the DA, this type of behavior is going to stem from the belief that each person should just be able to manage their own needs and meet all of their own needs. So they're not going to be directly trying to put you down or act like they're entitled above you to things. Letter C. Well, C is for can only be around people who are important or special. So the narcissist is going to have this deeply embedded belief that they're just so amazingly special and unique, like we said in the first letter S, that only other very special and very important and top-notch people can even really understand them. They can't really even be around anybody less than that, because no one's going to get it. They're not going to get it. They don't get it. They won't even know who we are. There is a narcissist in my family, and I must admit he has not been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, but he has been diagnosed with other mental health disorders, and I can say with confidence that he exhibits many narcissistic behaviors, and this is definitely one of them. One thing that he always used to say all the time that would just confuse all of us. We would all say, we've heard this in my family, and he would just say, and he would say our last name. We're these people. And we would just not know what that means. Like,
Yeah, that's who we are. What are you talking about?
and he would have this like smirk on his face, like he's onto some really, really unique or important or special secret information, top secret. We would just be like,
Yes, we are the last names. Okay?
and he would just be like,
Yeah. They don't get it. But you get it. We get it. Because we're the last names.
and we would just be like, I remember thinking sometimes as a kid or in my younger adult years, I didn't understand what's going on, and I would just think to myself,
I don't get it. So like, do I not? maybe I don't get it. But I'm glad he thinks I get it.
but I would not know what there was to get. I didn't understand. So that was one way that presented in him, was that what he was trying to say there was,
We're special. We have this status. We're very valuable. We're a lot smarter than everybody. No one else really knows what's going on around here, but you and I do, because we're of this caliber. We're up here. And that's why you and I understand each other, because we can only be around people that are really smart and special and unique.
that's what he was trying to say. It stems from a belief that they can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status individuals or institutions. So they might join prestigious clubs or brag about their status. Maybe they have a high-class credit card or something that only certain people can have. Or they're really going to gravitate towards things that are very exclusive. And they probably won't go about always getting them in the right ways. They might make it up. And there's narcissists all across the board here, where some of them are prestigious like this. Maybe they are accepted by these circles. Maybe they have achieved these things and they're going to let you know about it. But then there are others that this is completely in their head, and actually they're pretty insufferable at times, and a lot of people don't like them, and they're very much not welcome in these types of circles, but they are going to have themselves convinced that they deserve to be, and so they are either going to continuously seek to be, or they're going to make it up and live in a delusional fantasy world about all their pretend achievements and the circles that they run in. These types of people are going to be the types of people that, like, they have somebody for everything. Like, they have somebody who, you need somebody to, I don't know, do your landscaping, and they're just like,
I have a guy, don't worry. No, fire that guy. You don't know what you're doing. Let me help you. I have a better guy.
They always have a better guy. They have it's like they have this whole team around them or something. Who's just like working for them because they have the best of everything. Like that. That's usually a very key indicator. For the dismissive avoidant, again, it's coming back to kind of the same thing. The tendency to focus on career. And they're going to place a high importance on their image within that career. This behavior isn't really very conflated with the DA, but if anything that the DA does could get conflated with this trait, it would probably be this. Like if they have maybe some important work events, if they're in a career where they have to go to really like nice suit and tie events or something like that, or they have to go do things where they have to be very professional or rub elbows with the elite, then they might seem like they are placing a high importance in this and maybe thinking like they have their nose up in the air. And at times, they might not always invite their partner, or they might be really hard on their partner about appearing at these types of things and want them to be perfect because they expect perfection out of themselves. And this can kind of make their partner feel like this person thinks they're above them and thinks that their work friends and their prestigious buddies are just like so much more cool than their partner, and their partner's going to feel like they don't fit in and that they don't want them around because they're just so embarrassing and they don't get it. So this could, that particular behavior I could see a scenario where that could happen. Where the DA is just, they're not trying to act better than their partner. They have a high importance in the area of their career, and they want it to go well, and they want to maintain a good reputation for their career, not just because of their status and that they think that those are the only people that are good enough for them. So that will be the difference. What's up, babes? That is the end of part 1, but it is not the end of the full episode. We still have 5 more criteria to go over about narcissistic personality disorder from the DSM. And the final 5, that's digging into some of the bread and butter, so to speak, of what narcissism really is. Some of the most sinister criteria still coming up in episode part 2. So you do not want to miss this. If narcissism has plagued your life in one way or another and you need some answers, tomorrow's episode is when you want to tune in. I'm telling you. Okay, I love ya. I'll see you then.